Hey, what's up guys, welcome to the channel. In this video we are going to look at how we test security controls at the individual determine if level using the FedRAMP 3PAO RTM template instead of the control testing at the control levels we have seen in the previous videos. We are going to test AC-11 session lock at the individual determine if level as an example, and also we are going to leverage, or we are going to use the NIST 853A as a guide. But before we do that, a free way to support the channel is by subscribing to help the channel grow. Also, do remember to like and hit the notification bell to get notified whenever I upload new video. Alright, let's get into it. Alright, so this is the FedRAMP 3PAO template, the RTM template. So you see that it contains 17 control family, right, with the exclusion of the PM. This is based on 853 Ref 4. That's why we have 17 control family with the exception of PM controls. Alright, so this here, the system name goes here. So you see we have a fictitious system name, already Dynamo in there. We have the total number of control to be tested is 325. You know, we have all the individual control families here, access control summary. So whichever one has the implementation statement, you know, you put it there. The ones without implementation statement, you know, you get the gist, right? So you can just fill it out here. This is how this template is set up, right? And how many controls were satisfied during the assessment and how many were not. You know, you calculate the percentage as well. All right. So here we have all the control summary, what each of the controls are doing. And remember, this template is based off what? It's based on a moderate system. So all the controls listed here will be based off moderate system. All right, so moving on, we have the AC control. So you see this AC control has already been populated for you. You know, you don't have to do anything. All the control requirement, the control objectives, the testing method. We have the examine, interview, and the test, observation, and evidence is listed here. Implementation status. We have assessment results, and so on and so forth. Likewise, you know, all the controls has been set up for you. All you have to do is just follow the testing procedure as stipulated in 853A, and then you could just, you know, complete your testing. That's what we're going to be using. So before we move on, this is the location where you can find the template, and I'm going to leave the link in the video description below. For example, we have a FedRAMP moderate security test case procedure. This is the one I just showed you. You can download it here. If your system is a low system, you can also download the low RTM for the system. And if your system is a high system, you can download these test cases just like the spreadsheet I showed you before. All right. This is the top of the page, and again I'm going to leave the link to this location in the video description so you can go in there and download the template for yourself for your practice. And also, before we move on, a quick review of the NIST Special Publication 853A Ref 4. Assessing security and privacy control in federal information systems and organization. On page 104, we have the AC-11 session lock. All right, so determine if, right? So you see that, so you see how this control has been broken down for testing as per the 853A. It is AC-11A. 1. The organization defines the time period of user inactivity after which the information system initiates a session lock. We have the two part of it. The information system prevents further access to the system by initiating a session lock after organization defined time period of user inactivity or upon receiving a request from a user. That is what Control Alt Delete, and then you lock your screen, right? All right, or you leave it unattended for 15 minutes. This should kick in unless the control has not been set up properly. All right, so we have the B part of the control, AC-11B. The information system retains the session lock until the user reestablishes access using established identification and authentication procedures. All right, so now let's look at the potential assessment method and objective. So number one, as we all know, right, we have three assessment methods. We have the examine, we have the interview, and the test. So the examine pretty much talks about whenever you are looking at a control that is a documentation, like the SSP, policies and procedure, you use the term examine, right? So examine, that is select from access control policy, procedures addressing session lock, procedures addressing identification and authentication, information system design documentation, information system configuration settings, and associated documentation, security plan, and relevant documents or records, right? So you see that everything that is being talked about here is what documentation, or records, right? So you're going to examine the documentation, the policies and procedures. You're going to examine them, and that is a very good lingo to use here, right? If it is a document in terms of an artifact that you're testing, you examine the document, right? Or you examine the policies and procedure. Interview, that is when you meet with the stakeholders of the system and then you interview them. We have select from system network administrators, right? Organizational personnel with information security responsibility, system developers, and so on. So these guys, when you meet with them and you ask them about the system, about the control implementation, or how they set up some, safeguard or configuration, or how they configure the system, you're going to interview them and learn more about it and kind of compare that with the system security plan and see if what is being said or what has been documented is what the stakeholders will tell you during the interviews, right? All right, and then we have the last one, which is what, a test. So this is kind of tricky, right? When you have the term test, it means you're going to be testing technical control for the most part. But the technical controls, you get a screenshot of those, right? Or an image showing the config settings of how the controls have been implemented on the system. And also, you can have a walkthrough kind of, you can have a walkthrough to demonstrate how these controls are implemented. Like for instance, for session lock, you can ask a user or a sysadmin to log into the system, leave the computer or the server unattended or undisturbed for 15 minutes or 20 minutes or whatever minutes that is configured in their security plan or that is defined in their security plan. Leave it on undisturbed and see if the system is going to lock itself after the time period has elapsed, right? So these are some of the things that you consider testing. You're going to test it either by screenshot or you're going to actually make somebody do it and then you observe, right? All right, so it says select from automated mechanism implemented access control policy for session lock. And we're going to see how this works. All right, so now let's go over how we're going to test the AC-11 session lock. So we navigate down to our AC-11. All right, so the first one here we're going to be looking at is AC-11.A.1. It says determine. So you see the control objective here is just like we saw in the 853A. Determine if the organization defined the time period of user inactivity after which the information system initiates a session lock. And this is it, right, in the document. So pretty much whatever is in 853A is what is being shown in the RTM or the test case that we are using. So you see, determine if the organization defines the time period of user inactivity after which the information system initiates a session lock. All right, so to test this, it is giving you what? The test method. It says examine. So you notice that the interview and the test has been grayed out. So this is showing you that if it is a document, pretty much you're going to do what? Examine. But even though we're going to look at some extra evidence, but for the most part, pretty much if it is a document, you need to examine the documentation, right? So now access control policy procedure addressing session lock procedure, addressing identification and authentication, information system design documentation, information system configuration settings, and associated documentation, security plans, and the relevant document. So our first artifact here is going to be the access control policies and procedure. Let's navigate to that. All right, so this is going to be our evidence or artifact location. So we navigated to our artifact location. The very first artifact we're looking for here to test the control or to test the determine if level is going to be what? The access control policies and procedure. So we open up the artifact, the access control policy and procedure, and we're going to read what the agency or the organization or how they have implemented this control. So AC-11 session lock, and this is good. This is the policy and procedure as an evidence that we have, right? All right. All right. So the agency information system prevents further end user access to the system by initiating a session lock after 15 minutes of inactivity or upon receipt of what? Request from the user. All right, so looking at the 853A and the policy side by side, this is not calling for any specific time period. It is the organization that determines how many minutes they want to set up as the time of, how many minutes they want to set up to initiate a session lock when the user leaves the computer unattended or does not do anything with the computer. So you see that you are going to determine if they set up a time period, but the time period is going to be based on their policy. So whatever policy they set is what you're going to test. So you see the policy is saying that this organization is setting the inactivity time period to what? 15 minutes, and then the system will initiate a session lock. Based on what we just saw or what we just read from the evidence, we noticed that this system has implemented 15 minutes as the time period of inactivity before the system initiates a session lock. So this is going to be our observation based on the evidence, which is the access control policy and procedure that was submitted to us. KamilSec or whoever is testing, your firm or your company name or whatever is the third-party assessment organization testing, is going to be avoid using like I or me, use the company name, right? So KamilSec obtained and examined the XYZ agency's access control policy and procedure and noted that the AC-11 verbiage defined the time period of inactivity of 15 minutes, i.e. that is 900 seconds, after which the information system, Dynamo, initiate a session lock, right? So that's what we saw in their document. But to test further, we can also request a screenshot to see how this 15 minutes or 900 seconds is configured on the system. Or better still, we can also request to see, or better still, we can request to have someone log into the system, leave the system unattended or undisturbed for 15 minutes and see if the system will lock itself out. See if the system would initiate a session lock. All right, so let's look at another evidence that was submitted to support this information, the 15 minutes, right? So this is going to be a screenshot. So you notice that this is the configuration from the server, right? Configuration settings from the server. This, we've seen that the screensaver timeout is 900 seconds, right? So 900 seconds translate to 15 minutes. So it means that after 15 minutes of inactivity, this system or all the workstation connected to this server should time out after 900 seconds. And also, to further validate the screenshot that was submitted, if you are on site or you are close to a system admin that can do this walkthrough with you, or more so these days, we can do some sort of a screen share where the system admin can actually show you this even when you are at a remote location, right? So you go to the group policy, you go to the group policy here, you click on the edit. It's typically a user configuration in the administrative template. You go to control panel, you go to personalization. So you can actually see that this screensaver timeout has been enabled here, right? And then also you can double click on it to see how many seconds has been enabled. So this tells you that this has been enabled on the Active Directory, and all the workstations joined to this Active Directory is going to be what affected by this GPO, right? So it's a technical control. You don't have to go through all the thousands, 2,000, and 10,000s workstation joined to this domain to see if everything has been set up. Once you see it on the Active Directory and all the computers connected to the Active Directory are going to be, this GPO is going to be enforced on those computers, right? All right. So this is another level of confirmation. Now moving on to our observation and evidence. So like we said, we obtain and examine the XYZ, whatever the agency name is, you can put it in there. So we obtain and examine the XYZ agency's access control policy and procedure. And we noted that the AC-11 defined the time period of inactivity of 15 minutes, that's 900 seconds, and we confirmed that through the access control policy as well as the GPO settings in the Active Directory and the screenshot that was provided to us. So this has been confirmed. This control passes, right? So this level of determine if is passed. All right, so before we move on to the next determine if level, so what if your system is a Linux system? Because mostly we have what? The Windows environment and the Linux environment, right? So if your systems are Windows and Linux, in Linux, we also have another PBC. So the PBC here stands for what? Provided by the client. And this is how, for the most part, artifacts and evidence are being submitted for testing, right? They name them by what? PBC, provided by the client, you know, number 100, number 150, whatever number it is they provided with. All right, so now let's look at the Linux server. So in the Linux server, you see that this has been set to be 900 seconds. So it means that if you have a Linux server and you leave it unattended for 900 seconds, that's 15 minutes, this Linux server will also initiate a session lock. All right, so and again, to validate the screenshot that we just saw from the Linux servers, you can have a system admin do a screen share, or if you're on site, you know, kind of observe him do it to demonstrate the configuration settings or the config file where this 900 seconds has been set. All right, so we could do, the system admin can easily go to the box and navigate to the etc file, etc folder, and do a nano tmx config. All right, so here you see that this has been configured to 900, just like we saw in the screenshot, right? So this automatically log command line user session after 15 minutes of inactivity. This configuration is also set on all the Linux servers. All right. So now we can, you know, confirm our conclusion and observation that this has been set to what, 900 seconds for, or 15 minutes for both the Windows and the Linux environment. And what do we do now? So the implementation status, we're just going to give it what the implementation status of implemented, and the assessment result here is going to be satisfied. Everything has been satisfied here. All right, so if your rules of engagement calls that you do identify risk, likelihood, impact level, and so on and so forth, you can complete this. But for the most part, the observation, the implementation status, and assessment results suffice for this testing. All right, so this determine if level for the first one has been completed. Now we're going to go to the next determine if level to test that level of determine if. It's not a control level where you combine everything and test it at once. This has to go through each determine if level as it is stated in the word 853A. All right, so now the next determine if level, AC-11.A.2, determine if the information system prevents further access to the system by initiating a session lock after organization defined time period of user inactivity or upon receiving a request from the user. So upon receiving a request from the user is what your typical control or delete, right? And then see if the screen lock, if the session will lock, right? So this is easy, you can confirm this, but the config is the most important thing here. All right, so you notice that here the examine has been grayed out, right? So it means it is typically not a documentation review. This is going to be what either you interview system admin or network admin, or you test a config setting, or you actually have a walkthrough of an admin demonstrating how this is set up on the system. All right, so now let's see how that works. All right, so going back to our evidence folder, we have PBC number 22 AC-11.A.2I. All right, let's look at this evidence. So this evidence is showing us that we looked at the first login time onto a workstation that is joined to this network. The login time is what, 5:35 p.m. right? So the next screenshot is going to show us that this screen is gonna what is gonna this screen is gonna lock right after 15 minutes and display a screensaver to hide this desktop of the workstation. All right, so now let's look at the next screenshot. This is what PBC number 23 AC-11A.2II. All right, so you see this is another screenshot of the system after 15 minutes. You notice that the desktop was gone and we have a screensaver here. This is what this screenshot is telling us, that after 15 minutes the desktop was locked and the screensaver was initiated. But then again, we can ask for like a walkthrough or a demo from a system to log into one from a system administrator to log into one of the systems to see if after 15 minutes, that is, you have to wait for 15 minutes and see if the system actually initiate a session lock. All right, so to demonstrate this, I have the two machines side by side. This is the Active Directory or the domain controller, and this is one of the machine joined to the Active Directory. So let me log into the server or the Active Directory first. All right, so I'm in the server right now, and this is gonna be one of the machine joined to the server. All right, so let's look at how this is going to work. So now we just logged into this machine and it's what, 11:41 p.m. So we're going to leave this machine unattended for 15 minutes and see if it is going to lock. All right, so now we can see at the bottom of the Windows 10 machine on the left hand side, the bottom right hand corner, we have what, 11:46. I don't want to use the mouse on it because I don't want to disturb the machine. So you can see that it's 11:46. 5 minutes just passed, so we're still waiting and see if this machine is going to lock after 15 minutes. All right, so now you can see that at the bottom right hand corner we have 11:51. So 10 minutes just went by and this screen is still not locked yet. So 5 more minutes and then we can validate if this configuration is working good. So we see that at 11:56 we have the session lock initiated. All right, so this tells us that the config is working correctly. All right, and to further access the system, we need to provide our user password before we can log into the system. So this screen lock is actually preventing further access to the system whenever the session lock is initiated. So likewise on our Linux CentOS 8 virtual machine, we have to really have a sysadmin or system administrator log into this machine and leave it undisturbed for 15 minutes so we can validate that the 15-minute session lock is actually configured correctly. So to do that, we're going to have an admin log in. Oh, let's do that again. All right, so we're gonna have an admin login, and then we're gonna sit and wait for 15 minutes to see if this screen will lock, right? All right, so this is exactly how we did the Windows. So we're not going to wait and see if this is going to lock, but this is how you do it on the real life scenario. You have a system admin or Linux administrator log into the machine, leave it on disturb, unattended, and then watch it and see if it locks the session log after 15 minutes of undisturbed or inactivity. All right, so now let's go back to our spreadsheet and get our results in. All right, so now to write our observation of what we have observed, through the config settings, the screenshot, and also logging in and watching the screen log after 15 minutes, we're going to write our observation. KamilSec obtained an Active Directory GPA configuration settings, as well as Linux servers config file screenshot of the session lock settings to test. We also observe, so maybe we can change this to we also observe observed a login session left undisturbed for 15 minutes, after which the session was logged. And that's exactly what we observed, right? So what is the implementation status here? So the implementation status here would be what? Implemented. And then the results here will be what? Satisfied. This control has been satisfied. There is nothing. This determine if level of the control has been satisfied. All right, now let's go to the next determine if level to see what is that level saying. So you see the difference between this and the previous videos. We were testing at the control level, but this one here is testing as the what? Is testing at the determine if level. Each of these level must be tested. Each of these component or aspect of or the parameters of this control must be tested individually. So now we have the next determine if level is AC-11.b. Determine if the information system retains the session lock until the user reestablishes access using established identification and authentication procedures, right? And again, this is not going to be examined. This is going to be what? Interview, and also reviewing of a screenshot of a config or observing the system behavior, just like we did, in the last determine if we just completed. All right, so now let's go back into our boxes and see how we can observe this. So now this is what the control is saying. Determine if the information system retains the session lock until the user reestablishes access using established identification and authentication procedure. So it means you cannot get access to this system after the 15-minute session lock is initiated. So definitely we have to put in our what? Authenticators, which is the passwords. We have our username already in here, so we have to put in our authenticator. All right, so in order to get back to our screen, this has been confirmed that we need to enter our what? Password before we can get back to the system. So this control is actually working perfect. All right, so now moving on to our observation. We can also do the interview. If we have the sysadmins, we interview them, and then we're going to ask them to log into the system or try to log into the system and see if it will prompt them to enter the password. Once we observe that, and then we can go ahead and write our observation, and that is going to be KamilSec observed that the screen lock was in place until a user reestablished the session with an approved credentials, and that's exactly what we observed. So the implementation status here will be what? Implemented, and the result here will be satisfied. All right, so now we're going to look at the last determine if for the AC-11. All right, so it says determine if the information system, this is going to be AC-11 enhancement 1. Determine if the information system conceals via the session lock information previously visible on the on the display with a publicly viewable image. So here you can actually you can review this. Actually, the testing method is all the three. You can review the access control policy and procedure. You can interview the stakeholder, the system stakeholders, and also you can test the screenshot and also do an observation of a system admin. Do this determine if control to make sure it is in place and it's working as it should or as expected. All right, so going back to our policy and procedure documentation as an evidence, we're going to look at the access control or AC-11 enhancement 1 session log pattern hiding display. So we have agency information system shall conceal via the session log information previously visible on the display with a publicly viewable image such as what screensaver, photographic image, blank screen, solid color, clock, etc. Screensaver images shall not convey sensitive information. So more or less, whatever information the user is using on the screen before the session log is initiated should not be visible. It should be something else, like a screensaver. So now let's confirm. Now this is what the policy is saying. The policy is saying that they have configured one of these instead of leaving the screen with the information that the user was previously working on. All right, so now let's confirm that. So now we see that on the Windows 10 machine or on the Windows 10 virtual machine, we have the Burj Khalifa as what is displayed on the screen. All right, so if we're gonna invoke this screen lock, manually, like Control Alt Delete, or just lock the screen like that. Now we see that the Burj Khalifa is no longer visible. It is something else, right? So this is what this control is saying. You have to hide the information that was previously displayed on the screen with something that is what a public image that is not going to reveal whatever sensitive information the user was previously working on. So likewise on the server, you notice that the server also has a screensaver, which is different from the server manager that was previously displayed. So we can verify that here by going into the server. All right, so now you see that this is the server manager that was previously displayed on the screen before the screensaver was initiated. All right, so this is what this control is saying. Whatever information is being displayed before the session log should not be visible by anybody unless the session is reestablished. And this is what we have here. We have the screensaver here that is concealing whatever information that was previously displayed. In this case, our Burj Khalifa image has been concealed by a publicly viewable screensaver like we see here. All right, so now to go back to our screenshot, and likewise, this is going to be the same for the Linux servers as well. When the session log is initiated, you're going to see a different screen. Let's see if we can see that. And again, this is our CentOS Linux machine. You see that this is a clock that is being displayed as a screensaver. So in order to get to whatever information was previously displayed on this screen, you have to log in with your credential. So this information, the previous information displayed on the screen has been concealed by this clock and date screensaver. All right, so now moving on to our spreadsheet or the RTM or the test case to write our observation, we've observed. We're just going to put in our observation here. KamilSec observed that the information previously displayed on the screen or session was concealed. Let's make this past tense. Was concealed with a publicly viewable image, just like we saw, right? So this has been confirmed. All right, so now What is our implementation status? This has been implemented, and the assessment result here is satisfied. So now we've completely tested the access control AC-11 session lock based on revision 4, and mind you, the session lock, the name has been changed from session lock to device lock in revision 5, but because this template is based on revision 4, everything else is being stated as revision 4. I'm sure FedRAMP would update this template very soon with the revision 5 template, and this session lock will be changed to device lock. And this is how you test this control. I hope this information was very helpful, and you've seen the difference between the control testing at the control level and the control testing using the determine if level, where you look at each parameter of the control individually and test each with an evidence to provide your observation and assessment result. All right, guys, that's it for this video. If you find this video useful, do like, share, and subscribe if you have not already. Please do comment below and let me know your thought on this video, and I'll see you in the next video. But do not forget to like the video, because this is going to help the YouTube algorithm expose this video to a lot of people. Thanks, and I'll see you in the next video.